Hello Scorpios, and welcome to your birthday forecast. Thank you so much for joining me, and happy birthday to you all as we enter Scorpio season. I'm going to be doing a general read for you guys with some oracle cards. I'm also going to be pulling from the Prisma Visions Tarot, but first we'll talk a little bit about the energies at play for you currently. Now, this reading isn't just for Scorpio suns. If you are a Scorpio rising, Scorpio moon, or you just have sort of heavy Scorpio energy, lots of planets in Scorpio in your chart, then you're also very welcome. When we're looking at horoscopes in general, sun sign astrology does tend to be emphasized, but it isn't always so accurate when we're looking at a horoscope. I do think looking at the sign of your rising sign, your ascendant, can be a little bit more helpful when you're just looking at general horoscopes, because it tells you a little bit more about the kind of things that are happening to you, things that you are facing in the world, circumstances. Whereas the sun, the ascendant is representative of us in the physical world, whereas the sun represents our ego, our sense of identity. So it's a little bit more internal. The moon, of course, is our sort of more unconscious, emotional personality. So you might find, if you're reading horoscopes, that one of those three sort of signs of the big three, sun, moon, and ascendant, might feel a little bit more accurate for you. So Scorpios in general, whatever your Scorpio placement is, let's talk a little bit about the sort of the headlines for you guys, the energies that you're all facing. Of course, your Scorpio placements will all be at different degrees, so it's hard to talk in big general terms. However, one of the major things that Scorpios are facing is Uranus, the big change-making planet, the revolutionary planet of surprises, is in your opposing sign of Taurus. So it's been there for a couple of years now. So those of you with your Scorpio placement in the early degrees, so if your birthday is sort of today in the coming week, will have already faced this Uranus transit to your Scorpio placement. Uranus transits tend to last around 18 months and make around sort of 3 direct oppositions to the placement. And Uranus can be really disruptive. It can be, especially in an opposition aspect. Now, the opposition, because it's opposing you in the zodiac in Taurus. And the opposing sign is typically, it shows how we interact with others closely. The 7th house, so if you're Scorpio rising, Taurus is your 7th house, is traditionally the house of the marriage partner, or your close one-to-one contacts with others, right? So if you are Scorpio rising, you will feel this transit quite likely in your close personal relationships. If you're Scorpio sun, you will find that you will be experiencing some degree of disruption and surprise around your identity and your core sense of self in the world. If you are a Scorpio moon, quite likely you will find that this transit affects your home, your sense of home. It's typically Uranus against the moon can be a time when we're moving around a lot, but it can also create disruption in terms of our relationship to the feminine, the women in our life. The moon represents the feminine, but just our emotional landscape in general. So of course the nature of how this will play out for you depends on what that Scorpio placement is. But with the opposition, it's all about, it seems to be coming at us rather than from us. If there's change that's happening, it seems to be happening to us, against our will, in these kind of surprising and unexpected ways, rather than coming from us by our choosing. You may be feeling quite restless, and typically with Uranus, if we've been in a rut of some kind, stuck in our comfort zone for a while, that's the kind of thing Uranus likes to come in and kind of shuffle up. Uranus wants us to be free and authentic and honor our true selves, even if other people perhaps don't understand that. It's all about sort of individuation and to thine own self be true. So I always say with Uranus transits, challenging Uranus transits, that if there's something in your life that isn't quite right, but you don't know how to change it, you've been going through the motions, you're a little bit bored, things are stagnating, change it. Make those changes step by step, make those changes, otherwise Uranus will make them for you. Uranus will put some kind of obstacle there, not to alarm you guys don't get anxious about transits. Often if you're looking them up online, they can be a little bit alarming, but there's no need. If we understand the energies at play, we know how to react and engage with them. But if you would like someone to talk you through, if you have been having a disruptive Uranus transit, and because of course how this affects you will again be determined on the house of Uranus in your natal chart, and also the house of your sun or whatever your Scorpio placement is. That can tell us more about how we might be affected by a given transit. So yeah, all the info on the transit readings I offer and the natal chart readings I offer is down below in the description box. You can reach me at leonora.astrotarot@gmail.com. I will mention a little bit about Saturn before we get onto the reading. Saturn has been in Aquarius for the past year or so. This is tough for Scorpios. I won't gloss it over for you. The good thing with Saturn is that it moves relatively quickly. It spends about 2.5 years in a sign, so and it's currently about 7 degrees of Aquarius. So those of you with your Scorpio placement in the early degrees will have already faced the square from Saturn to that placement, and yeah, it's a challenging time when Saturn is squaring any kind of sensitive placement. If it is squaring your ascendant, it will lead you to question yourself, who you are, your identity in the world, usually by some kind of outward circumstance with the ascendant, something that actually happens to you. With the sun, it can be a little bit more subtle, but still we're feeling alone and unsupported. Often when Saturn is squaring a sensitive placement with the moon, it can be very lonely. All of these transits can be quite depressing. However, Saturn tends to make things look worse than they are, and that's always important to bear in mind when you're in the midst of one of these transits, is that it's a glass half empty kind of feeling, and once that Saturn moves off the exact degree point, very likely the feeling will ease, and things won't seem so bad. So always bear that in mind, that things probably seem worse than they seem, but the idea, Saturn wants to build our kind of our fortitude, make us stronger, sort of make us sort of grow, often in a kind of tough way where we have to fend for ourselves and learn to build our inner resources for coping. But yeah, I know it isn't fun. Trust me, I'm Taurus rising, so yeah, it's a tough thing. Again, if you are looking for a little bit of support and help in understanding these transits, do reach out to me. But yeah, Scorpios, let's move on to your reading. Let's have a look at these oracle cards I have for you, just to have a look at the coming month. We have winter, interesting. We have the arrow. We have animal allies, interesting. So of course, as we move into Scorpio season, if you are in the northern hemisphere, we are moving into winter during that time. But I get the sense some of you guys may be very affected by these Saturn transits. Things may be feeling a little bit kind of internally bleak. What I am getting here with this winter card is again, there's something about things perhaps seeming a little bit one thing I want to say here is, don't make major decisions, if you're in a state of, if you're not quite in a calm and still space. That's what's coming through to me in this card. So whether it's Saturn, whether it's Uranus, whether your life feels a little bit disrupted at the moment, it may be that for many of you, you're experiencing kind of a lack of clarity or just a lot of extreme emotions. I am feeling that if you can find a place wherever you are to be alone, if there's an important decision that you're having to make, Scorpio, don't make it when I think we all know when we're sort of not quite feeling ourselves, right? We know that there's some kind of mysterious energetic force at play, and usually these extreme feelings, they come over us, they pass, they don't last, you know. So yeah, make sure you're making decisions from a place of calm and stability and inner stillness, even if the world around you feels quite chaotic. You know, we have the arrow here as your kind of crowning energy, which suggests that there's a real sense of direction or something that you want or something that you're aiming for. Some of you may be struggling with direction. That's too, that whatever the circumstances are in your life, there's just a lack of clarity in general about how to move forward with the things that you want currently. I think that this feeling is pretty temporary, Scorpios, so it's not going to be around forever. It's all about learning to breathe through and find a kind of inner stillness within outward instability, I think. It may feel like a lot of things in your life are going sort of in different directions. You may feel kind of disconnected from certain people around you that you had in the past felt connected to, or it's almost like there are people, things are disbanding, or your sense of security just isn't what it was, Scorpio. And there's a general sense of being at odds, perhaps at odds with your environment, and not knowing how to connect with yourself internally because of that. The things, as I was saying about Saturn in the intro, it's like if you can, we can't rely on other things to provide us stability. I know it's sort of, we do tend to do that, but it's like you never know when your house is going to be destroyed. We never know when we might lose someone through forces beyond our control and have to completely rely on inner resources. There is just this overall sense of outward change that is leading you to have to go within to know how to navigate it. Ooh, let me take this one. At the same time, there's a real sense of you're being propelled somewhere with this arrow. For some of you, you may not know what that is. For some of you, you may know exactly what it is. But you're struggling to find a sense of, like, a presence of mind or clarity to go after something. You may be experiencing also sort of competing advice, or people are telling you different things. That's coming through. You may just feel kind of at odds with your environment generally. Animal allies, of course. Some of you, if you are pet lovers, if you have a strong bond with your pet, that may be sort of a way for you to be connected to yourself. Our bonds with animals can be incredibly strong, I know. For you, Scorpio, at the moment, it's like, again, there's perhaps you've experienced a breakup, perhaps you've experienced sort of a breakup of friendships, and you're sort of having to look outside of your ordinarily kind of your points of stability to find a sense of connection. So whatever that might be for you, whether it is like a cat or a dog, whether it's just getting out into nature and, you know, trying to find a meditative space, all of this stuff is vital to maintain a sense of connection as you go through certain sort of inner and maybe outward changes. So we have the Queen of Wands here in the tarot. We have the Eight of Chalices, that's like the Eight of Cups. We have the Four of Chalices, the Four of Cups, the Four of Swords, and the King of Chalices. Yeah, many of you may have been through a shift in a very significant connection. With the Queen of Wands, some of you may feel a little bit disconnected from your sense of personal power. If you're experiencing a challenging Saturn transit to the Sun or the Ascendant, that certainly can be the case, where your identity feels a little bit slippery. This card is interesting because it's difficult for me to really make out the figure of the Queen of Wands. Many of you Scorpios are very magnetic, very sort of interesting and enticing people that people tend to be very, very drawn towards. But you may not feel that about yourself at the moment. You may have been feeling like that, you know, your usual sort of magnetism feels a little bit dulled. And I think it's really something that you're going through, Scorpio, where, like I said initially, it's like you're having to redefine something about what you lean on, who you rely on, who you don't rely on, in order to move forward. With the Eight of Cups, you are moving away from something, or there is a sense that certain things are ending, and in order for new things to start, you are going to have to move on. Like, we can't open a new door without closing that old door, right? But that may not be easy, and I'm sensing a lot of you are really second-guessing yourself. Like, you're not... Yeah, it's just like a struggle to really think clearly, because you're not feeling perhaps your usual sense of confidence, Scorpio, but at the same time you're being pushed with this arrow to move forward, but it's... you may be second-guessing your choices and then falling into a little bit of a kind of apathetic, stagnant state here with the Four of Cups. With the Four of Cups, there's usually something that's being offered to us that we're not acknowledging that could benefit us, right? In this particular Four of Cups or Four of Chalices, the cups aren't there. I don't think they're there are 4 cups here. There's 2 upright and 4 sort of, it doesn't have that usual imagery of the kind of like mystical hand offering the cup to the figure on the card. So it's definitely feels to me more of a sense of apathy. And right under this arrow card, it's like, this card is all about action, right? The arrow is this direct, a very direct taking your hit at something, but we have the 4 of Cups here underneath it. For those of you that are very clear about what you want, about a particular direction, I do think it's very important for you to gradually take steps. And like I said, with transits, all energies are shifting, everything is orbiting, everything is transitory. Sometimes we lose that sense of momentum and stamina, we feel weaker, we feel depleted. But I do think some of you, if you're identifying with this idea of there's something that you want, but you're just kind of lacking the, whether it's courage, whether it's willpower, the 4 of Cups is a little bit of a self-imposed sort of state of lethargy. So if there are things and habits that you have that kind of feed on that sense, being a little bit more disciplined with yourself, or being a little bit more optimistic. For those of you that are in the midst of a Saturn transit, I know it's really hard to feel optimistic, but know that optimism will return. It is a time to really address how you, for instance, if something in your world has been taken away from you, and it's leading you to question yourself at the very core of who you are, whether that's a relationship, a job opportunity, whatever it is drawing our attention to the need to build our sense of self internally. It can't depend on outward things, because we can always lose those things. And I think that's ultimately the teachings of Saturn. We have to build strong within ourselves. There is a couple of 4s here, and 4s are like a building number. They're a number of stability, about roots, about grounding. So all of these things are really essential to you right now, and they may feel essential because they're not there, and this will draw your focus to the idea of what are those things. If I've lost them, how can I build them back stronger? Things like that. If they've broken down before, what were the reasons? How can I make my life stronger? Essentially, these are the lessons of Saturn. And the lessons of Uranus tend to be about how can I find an inner stillness through chaos? The world is changing around me. How do I find a kind of internal sense of direction? We have the King of Chalices, the King of Cups here. Again, on this deck, like, there actually isn't figures on the court cards, so we don't have a person here. Again, it may be that there are certain people in your life that feel like they are fading or unavailable, that they're not reliable, all of those things. It'll be different for each of you. Some of you may be questioning relationships over the coming month and questioning what is really working for you, whether you can live without certain things. If you have been having conflicts in your life and feeling like people are going in different directions, it's a time of really questioning friendships and relationships. But I do think it's all about what is emotionally nourishing with the King of Cups, right? It's also a card that speaks of emotional maturity. So some of you may be simply outgrowing certain things that just don't work for you anymore. So there's this needed shift, there's this needed kind of going it alone that is happening for you. And all of this is leading to your growth, even if you're having to work your way through some degree of loneliness or just feeling very, very unsupported. These experiences you will find, I think, fast forward a few months, will have strengthened you to know how to stand on your own feet and also think for yourself, and getting that to, if you have experienced sort of slightly codependent relationships of various kinds in the past, or you've just found yourself in environments and situations that you're now realizing are just not working for you, or were just not really quite meant for you, you're not going to make those same mistakes again, Scorpio. You are learning to trust yourself throughout this month, in ways that perhaps you've never had to or felt pressed to before, because this arrow is is applying a kind of pressure to move towards something quite directly. For some of you, you may have something, like I said, something very specific that you want. For others, it's just this sense of having to move on and move away from things. Now, to come back to winter here, I do think that you are going through some quite significant changes throughout the rest of this year, and also through the winter season in the Northern Hemisphere. I know it's not winter for everyone, but let's say in the next sort of quarter, there are some difficult shifts that are going on, Scorpio, but they're not going to last forever. You will come out of it much stronger, much wiser, much sort of older in that emotional sense, wiser, like I said, there's something here about growing emotionally, in emotional maturity and knowledge. That's a really important time, even if right now everything feels a little bit bleak and you're feeling like you're not quite connected to yourself in ways that you once have. It's because that self is growing, that self is evolving and changing, and there's growing pains there, but you will settle into these changes, Scorpio, and you will feel more connected to yourself, I do think, throughout the coming months, and certainly as we move into 2022. So Scorpios, again, please find time to celebrate yourself, even if you're feeling a little bit low mood. Do try and take time to honor yourself as you enter into this new, your solar new year, this new sort of cycle. We love you, Scorpios, and wishing you happy birthday again and a wonderful year ahead. It's a pleasure to read for you, and I do look forward to reading for you the next time. Take care, everyone. Bye.